Okay, so we have an unplanned shiur for tonight. Um, the main reason I'm giving the shiur is because I have to set up. I have a new setup here with a big monitor where I have the grid with all the Zoom people on it, and then my screen. So hopefully this works out. I'm testing this out for the class I'll be teaching, which starts tomorrow. And also the other reason we're going to do a slight change of plans. Tomorrow is the first time is their first Mishlei class, and so I'm going to teach the pasuk that I tend to teach when I introduce Mishlei to people. And I chose this one because it's the most, to me, it's the most basic pasuk that has the structure of Mishlei, but also gets across some fundamental Mishlei ideas. Last time I taught this was when Ayala was in 11th grade, so this is in February 2020. But I want to see, we'll learn it like usual, but it's possible we'll come up with new ideas or whatever. Okay, so let's see. Now, can you see the, okay, I'm going to ask a lot of tech questions here. Can you see the pasuk on the screen? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so let's get started. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so we're doing Mishlei 14:15. Chacham yareh v'sar meira uksil misaber uboteach. So this is fairly straightforward to translate, except for the term misaber. So anyone want to try translating here? Yeah, Tamar?
A wise person fears and turns away from bad.
Yep. Okay, good.
And a foolish person, I don't know what this means, passes through himself.
Okay, so that's good. That's a good guess, as you can see from the short here. So we'll leave that blank for a second. Uboteach.
And trusts.
Okay, and trusts. Okay, so that's a good generic translation here. Okay, so misaber is difficult to translate. Okay, so I'm gonna actually put this here. Okay, misaber equals. Okay, so Tamara was mentioning that this comes from the root of to pass. Okay, like avar, which definitely is the reasonable possibility. You know, the first possibility that comes to mind. So, what would misaber mean in hispael, reflexive? Anyone?
Causes to pass over.
Say again. I couldn't hear.
Is it causes to pass over?
Okay, so it's reflexive, so he's doing it to himself. So makes himself pass. Okay, that's one translation. Okay. Another interpretation of the word, if you look at the Metzudas ציון, he says misaber is milashon evra v'kaas. Okay, and evra means anger or fury. Okay. So another interpretation is makes himself angry. Okay, those are the two primary meanings. What are some other ones? Another one is hispael, the reflexive, can also mean to pretend. Okay, so you can say pretends to pass or pretends to be angry. Okay, there might be more than that, but those are the ones that we are going to have so far. Okay. Yeah, you know what? Hold on a second. I'm just going to say this in the transliteration, misaber. Okay, and then this misaber, it means those things. Okay. All right, so hold on to these things for a second. Okay, so let's go on. We have here Sadigon who says Chacham misyare v'sar min hara. So Sadigon makes the fearing reflexive as well. So Sadigon says the Chacham makes himself afraid. Okay. The wise man makes himself fear. Okay. So that's what he says. The Targum, I actually forgot to look up. Chakima dachel umaste min bishta. So the Chacham fears and turns from evil. That's a straight translation. The Sachla mischalet b'sachlusa umasbir ba. Okay, so I don't know mischalet b'sachlusa means, but masbir ba means he puts his hope in it. Let's just ignore the Targum just for simplicity's sake now. Okay, and then I don't know why I've never done this in the past, but the Malbim also has a glossary, and the Malbim here says misaber. Hold on just a second. Malbim says misaber is she'over hagvul. Okay, misaber means he crosses the boundary. Okay, shagam, and then he says shagam geter misaber sheba al hakas ba mitzad avaras hagvul, because even the usage of the term anger, of misaber as anger comes from crossing the boundary. Okay, okay, fine. Then he gives us another interpretation there. Okay, fine. So that is the Malbim. Our scroll says a wise man fears and turns away from evil, but a fool becomes enraged and is confident. Okay, so they're going with meaning number 2. I'm just going to move these down here. Okay, that's our scroll. Rav Hirsch says a wise man is apprehensive and departs from evil, but a fool oversteps himself and remains confident. Okay, so he's saying that's actually closer to the Malbim of crossing a boundary or making himself step. And then the altar says a wise man is cautious and swerves from evil, but a fool rages and trusts too much. I don't know where he gets the too much from. Okay, so let's just keep it simple with our as simple as possible with our default translation with these 4 options for misaber, and these are really the main 2 options here. Okay, making himself pass and making himself angry. Okay, so what are the questions? Yeah, Ayala?
So what is the wise person fearing?
Okay, good. What is the wise person fearing? Great. Basic question. Yeah, Michael?
How are these opposites?
Okay, how are these opposites? Yeah. Okay, Tamar?
What kind of bad is this talking about?
Okay, what kind of ra, bad, is this talking about? And I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I should have said this earlier. Okay, so ra can mean bad, evil, or harm. Okay, I mean it can mean other stuff also, but let's just say those are the 3 meanings here. Okay, yeah, so did I write that? Hold on just 1 second here. Hold on. Okay, yeah, Ayala?
My question is on the second half of like what exactly is the consequence which is happening
Okay.
there?
Yeah, all right, so what consequence does the fool suffer in the second half? Right, so in other words, it's unclear. I mean, looks like it doesn't say a consequence, so we have to figure out what it is, or if this is a consequence, then how is this a consequence? Yeah, Isaiah?
What or who is the seal trusting in?
Okay. What or who or who is the seal, is the fool trusting? Okay, good. Yeah, Ayala?
What does misaver mean? And what does
Okay,
it mean
yeah.
that the fool is misaver?
Okay, good. So yeah, regardless of how, so I guess either way we translate misaber, what does it mean? Okay, good. Yeah, Tamar?
Just an elaboration on, I guess, the 3rd question.
Yeah.
Is the ra like an occurrence or an action? I guess I would normally think that this is like harm or something that's befalling him, but it says
Okay.
sarmira, and I guess that compound
Okay,
sounds like
good.
it could be his
Okay,
action.
good. So I'm gonna tack this on to your first question, which is this ra something that might happen to him, or something that he might like do? Okay, in other words, is he the object or the subject? Is he the object? Well, not that. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Is he the object? I'm gonna delete that question from my mind. Okay, yeah, Michael.
I think this applies to both half of the pasuk, but what is the relationship between each of the 2 things? Like, what is the relationship between misaber and then what the seal is trusting, and then what's
Okay.
what's the relationship between what he's fearing and then what the chacham is turning away from?
That is good. All right. So, what is the relationship between the chacham's fear and his turning from Ra, and then what is the relationship between the fools? I'll say the ksiels, misaber, and trusting. Yeah, Zach.
So here's what the intent is behind leaving out the final piece in the second half. So there's a wise person turns away from Ra, and then there's a foolish person trusts, and then there's a blank space there. So why is that missing in the way he articulated it?
Okay, I'm gonna try and make sure that I get the subtlety of your question here. You're saying that are you saying it's blank because it doesn't say, like, the Chacham turns from evil, but the fool just trusts, and then it doesn't say in relation to what? Or am I missing?
Yeah, exactly. Meaning there's potential answers you could plug in there. The question is why
Okay.
structure it that way?
All right, so I'm going to tack that onto 5. Moreover, why doesn't the pasuk identify what he trusts in? Yeah. Okay, Ayala.
So what are the definitions of chacham and ksil in this context?
Okay, good. All right, so let's just go ahead and put that right up front here. What are the definitions of chacham and ksil in this context? Okay. I'm starting to slow down. All right. Hopefully, this is not too taxing on my poor laptop. Okay. Isaiah.
So isn't it better to not do the evil or avoid the evil thing? Because it's, or not evil, but harmful, because it's harmful and not out of fear. Like,
Okay.
fearing like a low, I don't know, like it's a secondary reason not to be involved in the Ra.
Okay.
So why that?
So I'm going to go ahead and elaborate on question 2. What is the wise person fearing? I'm going to go ahead and say also, what is the nature or character of this fear? Okay, I'm going to leave the question general right now, because I feel like your question would be good, or your question like is good, but it also assumes something different. So I'm going to keep it vague. Yeah, Tamar.
What's like the scope of the situation?
Good. I was hoping someone would ask that. Okay, so what is the situation here? Okay, and we're gonna just normal Mishlei methodology. We're gonna assume that each half of the pasuk is describing what the fool and the chacham do in a similar or the identical situation here, right? So that's why it's one question. Okay, Zach.
So I mean, similar maybe to the kind of thinking we're on right now is it cause and effect? And if it is, then what is the cause and effect?
Are you talking about the cause and effect of the fearing and turning from evil and the yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm gonna tack that onto the question here. If this is cause and effect, what is the cause and effect? Okay, and then
I kind of want to say also, is it cause and effect? Because I think that also theoretically is an option.
Is this cause and effect? If so, what is the cause and effect? If so, yeah, okay. And then same thing here. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. All right, do we have everything? Yareh Sarme Ra. We asked what Chacham is, we asked what Yareh is, we asked what, oh, I guess Sarme Ra. Do we ask what Sarme Ra is? What does it mean he turns away from? No, we did not. So let's say here. So what does it mean that he turns away from Ra? Okay. And I guess that's going to kind of be directly dependent on how we answer the previous question, because if this is something that might happen to him, then it seems like he's going to have to take like, external precautions. And if this is something he might do, that's a whole completely separate process, that he would have to do in order to turn away from it. Okay. Ksil misaber boteach. Yeah. Okay. Usually I don't do this, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question. Okay, let me just throw this out here. Okay, we already asked the question: what is the relationship between the misaber and the boteach? I'm not going to ask this question here. Okay, if no one asks it, then we're not going to ask it here. I don't want to have an artificial question. Okay, I think we're good with the questions. If we need to, we can always add more. All right, so let me copy and paste this into the chat as usual. Copy and paste. Okay, so there are the first 6 questions. Went too far. And here are the next questions. Okay, so let us have our thinking minute, and then we will see what we come up with. I don't know how you feel about this pasuk right now, but hopefully you can see why I choose this as the introductory pasuk. quite basic, and I think that's the challenge here. Is I guess because Ariel is not here, then he's not saying this is obvious, But I could picture someone asking that, especially on the first half. In fact, we'll ask. We're not going to type it. Okay, I think it's a valid question here. All right, let's take a minute to think. I feel like we haven't had a pasuk about seal in a while. I just want to check. Where are we up to? Chapter 12, I think. Oh, yeah. So we did not. Or wait, yeah, that was very recently. Okay, so I guess we did. But in general, yeah, in all 3 years of Mishlei, I guess this is at the beginning of year 4 now. We've only had 2 psukim with seal in it. That's why it feels in the Monday night shiur. That's why it feels like we haven't done seal a lot. Yeah, looks like a couple of them are coming up. Okay, who has an approach? Yeah, Tamar.
I have a half baked, like it has a problem. So if somebody has
Sure.
a more full idea, then they could go first.
Okay, sure. Zach, you want to
go? Okay. So I was thinking that maybe this pasuk could be talking about coping mechanisms, and that the right coping mechanism versus the wrong coping mechanism can lead to different kinds of outcomes. So kind of got me thinking about this was the word misaber, because I was thinking of this in terms of the translation I was using was number 2, makes himself angry.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the juggernaut of the pasuk, like everything seems to flow except for that word. And so what I was thinking is the classic way of reading the first half is a wise person fears consequences and turns away from harm. And then what's going on in the second one? He gets himself angry and he it's so what's going on? And so I think that we might be able to flip the cause and effect in the second half, and we'll come to second why. But if they're trusting first rather than fearing, and then they end up being masaber, meaning they don't properly fear a situation, they trust the situation, and then they end up being angry at the situation and lashing out and being upset. Mm-hmm. And so then I was thinking, okay, well, that's interesting, but why write it backwards? Okay. And I was thinking that maybe it has to do with how a person knows they're going to cope. meaning a person has an approach in their mind of how they're going to deal with something going wrong. And if a person looks at a situation and says, oh, well, if it goes wrong, I can just get really angry at them. Like I think, I made a born witness to the kind of mentality of someone saying like, oh, I'll order a food haphazardly in a restaurant, not really checking if it's something that I like. And then if I don't like it, I'll just get mad and make them get me something new and different. Like that's a kind of an approach you can only do if you have the willingness to get angry before you go through the action. You have that mindset. You have a mindset in life of like, I'll just get angry and lash out, and that'll be my venting and my coping of the situation, versus a chacham who approaches it differently, and they don't look at things going wrong as an opportunity to get angry and lash out, but they look at it as an opportunity to improve themselves. So they see the fault within themselves, and that fear, they don't actually want to end up in that situation. So that mindset means that they're going to take action prior to something harmful, versus when you have the other mindset of like, oh, I'll just get angry and that either vent or force other people to bend to my will. That will be a reaction that will come after the situation. It won't be proactive, it'll be reactive, and therefore they'll meet a lot more harmful situations.
Okay, so there's a lot there that's a lot here that's good. I was smiling because at least structurally, I think the idea that you said is the idea that I teach when I teach this for the first time. But I don't want to say it's the same idea yet, because I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. Can you clarify for me what you mean by coping mechanism, or what type of scenario this is talking about? Give me a scenario where we can see how it plays out with the chacham and how it plays out with the ksiel. And hope preferably a scenario where like I can understand what you mean by coping mechanism.
I mean, maybe I'll stick with the restaurant. I don't think it's the best example. It's just the only time that I might have been able to witness this.
Okay.
But and I'm not even positive I've witnessed it, but I feel like I have. But I think that the harmful situation in a restaurant is ending up with a plate of food that you don't like.
Okay.
Food that isn't to your taste or whatever. And so a chacham will think, well, if I order the wrong food, that's on me, and I need to learn how to do that better. So rather than getting the bad food and then that lesson, I'll just have that lesson now and think about what I want to order, and then I'll get good food. So they avoid the harmful situation.
Okay, so just to stop here 1 second. So the yira, so the fear, is him anticipating that this might end up in a situation that he doesn't like, or that's not in line with his desires, and then turning away from that is, I guess, are those two things? What's the
turning away? So turning away is avoiding the situation and taking a preemptive step. Yeah. And the fear, I think, is a little bit tied to chachma, in the sense that it's saying that it's on me. Mm-hmm. Meaning I take things that go wrong as an opportunity to improve myself and figure out how to do things better. And so rather than ending up in the situation where I mess things up, I'll preemptively do things better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And then continue. I interrupted you before.
So, and then for the ksiel, he will have a different approach, meaning he anyways isn't going to take things on himself. He's not going to say, oh, I could have done things better. He anyways is going to lash out and be angry at other people, which will either just make him feel better and give him something to lash out and vent about, or it'll maybe in the short term meet his needs and force people to like bend to his, unreasonable requests. And so because he has in mind that that's a reasonable way to cope with a harmful situation, he's going to be less fearful of that harmful situation, and he's not going to turn away from it. And he'll just, you can either say he'll trust in the situation, or trust in his response to the situation, but he'll just go with the flow. He'll say, okay, I'll just order. I won't think about making the right order. I'll just kind of go by the seat of my pants.
He's gonna trust that
And
it's gonna turn out okay.
And well, no, it's I trust that if it turns out bad, I'll either get to yell at someone and get the satisfaction of being angry, or I'll still get what I want by unjustly forcing them to change my plate of food.
Okay, so then now the question, I guess, is what is the consequence, or what's the idea that the pasuk is teaching us? Because the
So I
difference is
think,
clear, though.
yeah, so I think the difference is that if we now multiply this scenario across numbers and scope, we see that one of them constantly is getting angry and getting harmful situations. Another
Yeah.
one is not.
Okay, that's not worth it.
So in a very isolated incident, you might be like, okay, the guy got what he wanted or he vented, but
Yeah.
in reality, he's spending a life being angry and in harmful situations, whereas the other person is getting what he wants and avoiding anger or harm.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna attempt to type this out, but I'm totally aware that I might miss some of the nuances here. Okay, so the Chacham approaches situations with an awareness that things might not work out, and
Preemptively, maybe.
yeah, and preempts those. Sorry, and then and that would and as long as I'm saying that might not work out, and takes responsibility for that. Consequently, he will preemptively think about what might go wrong and avoid making those bad decisions to the extent possible. Okay. The Ksiel, on the other hand, I feel like we should. There's a description that's coming to mind about how this seal goes through life. Like it is a very like forceful way to just he just kind of pushes through and just said
lashes out or imposes his
right imposes right doesn't attempt to preemptively avoid bad outcomes, but instead forces imposes his will on the situation and either gets what he wants or becomes enraged when he doesn't. And the consequence is that he will experience this anger and these bad outcomes far more frequently than the Chacham.
Whereas the Chacham will, conversely, the Chacham will improve his ability to get what he wants because he'll be exact.
All right. Whereas the Chacham will constantly be improving his ability to get what he wants. Okay.
The one piece here I think that is maybe helps me encapsulate the thought in my head is that it's distinguished by coping mechanisms. The Chacham's coping mechanism is to grow. He has a growth mindset. So that growth mindset leads to what we just described because therefore that leads to that whole chain of events. Versus the Ksil, his coping mechanism is to lash out and to get angry and to impose himself on others and to berate others. And knowing both of these people know ahead of time what their coping mechanism is, and it lends itself to a natural flow of consequences in terms of how they engage with harmful situations.
Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna hold off on my idea because, like I said, it's possible that my idea is the same as yours, but I trust that I wrote it down somewhere, so we'll look it up later on. Okay, next, let's go. Tamar, did yours develop a little bit more?
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's kind of similar to Zach's, but I think it is different. So I'm gonna try and say it.
Sure.
So I think that I mean, similar in the first half, but this is two approaches to things that might happen to you that you don't want to happen.
Okay.
So I'm reading Yurei not as like being like, let's say, worried or paranoid, but it's just sort of like to me, I think it's like a somber or something, like a serious mindset where you take the possibility of bad things happening seriously. So
Right.
you make an investment and you really think about what would happen if you lost the investment. You really think about all the factors that are in your control, because it's like you really understand that you could lose the investment, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what the fear is. That's how I'm reading the fear. And then the second half, so what helped me was Zach reading it backwards, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think that a person who's in a certain kind of foolish mindset, the way that they feel about things, they're not distinguishing between the way that they feel about things and the way that things like are or should be. It's kind of just all one
Right,
blob.
right.
So like, you have a good feeling about your investment. That's it. It's going to work out. It should work out. If it doesn't work out, like, the world is unfair.
Right.
So it's sort of like maybe like a cycle where they're trusting either their gut or their perception or what they want to be what's going to happen, and when that doesn't happen, then they're mad.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's my interpretation.
Okay,
yeah.
so I think that is what I was my idea as well, and I think that's why I also have the problem of it being stated backwards, and it'd be really nice to work that out. Oops, hold on a second. Everyone just disappeared. Am I back? Can you hear me?
We
And
can
we
Yeah.
see
Okay.
something pop up on the screen, like
Oh, okay, weird. All right. I just want to now. I said I was going to save this, but I just want to read my write-up of this. And it sounds a lot like what Tamara's saying, and at the very least, this will help us to differentiate. Stupid search engine that never seems to work. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see if I can find it. 1416. Okay, so I wrote. Okay, Mishleic wisdom and fool. I call this the security of the Chacham and the Ksiel. Mishleic wisdom and foolishness are not measured by a person's IQ, nor by how much they know, but by their orientation towards reality. Chazal teach who is wise, one who sees the consequences of his actions. And we may derive the opposite, who is foolish, one who does not see the consequences. The Ksiel, the Mishleic fool, assumes that reality revolves around his desires. Therefore, he will not think about the consequences, but will simply push forward with brash confidence, assuming that things will automatically work out in his favor. In contrast, the Chacham, who possesses Mishleic wisdom, recognizes that reality does not automatically conform to his wishes and will therefore proceed with caution and do everything in his power to avoid harmful long-term consequences. Okay, this is actually a different write-up than the original one I had. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can find it. I think the original one was closer to Tamara's. This one is also related, but I think I did not go with the anger part in this one. Hold on, give me one more second here. 1416. Yeah, this one's like Tamara's. Okay, here I wrote, the Ksiel assumes that reality will conform to his desires. That's like what Tamara was saying, that he just doesn't differentiate between like, the internal and the external. For this reason, he doesn't feel the need to think ahead of time about the consequences of his actions. Consequently, here's the part I think that Tamara is saying, the Ksiel is in a constant state of flux between two emotional states: irrational confidence that reality will go his way and disproportionate rage when it doesn't. The Chacham, on the other hand, realizes that he is subject to the lawfulness of the universe, and that's the fear, and the most reliable way to achieve success and avoid failure is to align himself with reality, meaning to anticipate, well, what could go wrong, and how do I get the result I want, and then how do I align myself with that course. Therefore, the Chacham is apprehensive and assesses the consequences of his actions beforehand, thereby avoiding harm and increasing the probability of success. Okay, Tamara, I'll ask Tamara first. Tamara, any thoughts on either of those two ideas in relation to what you were saying? See if we could like just parse it out, you know?
Yeah, I think the second one is the same idea.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Okay, yeah, I think so also. Okay, so let's write that out. So the Chacham's fear is not a paranoia or like neurotic worry, but a mentality of taking the probability of things going wrong seriously. Okay. As a result of this mentality, he will make decisions in a way, decisions in a way that avoids many bad outcomes. The Ksiel, on the other hand, just assumes that reality will go his way, and when it doesn't, he gets angry. Thus, he is in a constant state of overconfidence and righteous indignation. Yeah. Okay. And that itself, are you saying, Tamar, that itself is the I guess the consequence is similar, like that he's going to get bad results and he's going to be constantly like angry. Right?
Yeah, I think he's also just failing to avoid all the things he's trying to avoid.
Right. So the consequence is that he'll suffer a lot of ra, and he'll get way more angry about it than a chacham would. Yeah. And this idea, I didn't change fonts. This idea is not, I think it pairs well with Zach's idea, because I do think that the way we're talking about the Chacham here shows that he does have a growth mentality, and he's also going to constantly improve, whereas the Ksiel is just going to find himself like in this situation again and again. Okay, very nice. Okay, Yala, you're up.
Okay, so I can't tell how similar or different mine is, but I mean, it's definitely a little different. So what I was thinking is that this pasuk is describing the way that both of these characters relate to like their feelings, kind of.
Okay.
And it's saying that the Chacham here, when he fears, he will turn away from evil, meaning that, when he fears, he's gonna like think about the situation and what is actually bad and harmful about the situation and what is not, and the Ra he's gonna turn away from. Whereas on the other side, I was originally looking at Misaver as makes himself pass, and saying that like the fool, when he feels something, kind of like I was describing the feeling is like that you could feel like something is going to go wrong, and like when you feel fear, it many times it's indicative that like there is like something to like straighten out, kind of, and not that it always is. That's why I think like he's just turning away from the Ra.
Yeah.
But I think the fool is either he's just like kind of not in touch with his emotions and like feelings about that, because I think he's used to just like making reality go his way and assuming that reality will go his way, so he's not going to even notice like when he thinks or feels something is going to be different than the way that he wants it to go, and then he trusts. Or making himself angry, I was thinking of maybe just like instead of like ignoring it, it's also the mindset of like you're angry when you don't want reality to go a certain way, kind of.
Right.
So he's also just like ignoring the possibility that it'll go any other way.
Okay, do me a favor, just say the beginning of your idea again, just the way that you were saying what the pasuk is about.
Okay, the pasuk is about how both of these characters relate to their feelings, or maybe respond to their feelings.
Okay. Responds to their feelings. Okay, right. So and their feelings in was it in a particular situation or as a default?
I think in reference to different situations. So I think like let's say when something is happening or like they're gonna do something, and then like I think like everyone has a bunch of different feelings about a situation, but I think sometimes you like there's some place of like doubt or like maybe something will go wrong here, but I think it's really easy to pass over. But the Chacham uses that as a tool to see like, well, is there like going to be things that go wrong? And he'll also think about it rationally, whatever, but that too.
All right. So when they're about to do something, different feelings will arise. The Chacham will use these feelings as a prompt for self-reflection, aimed at avoiding bad decisions, whereas the Ksiel will ignore, repress, like force his way through those feelings, and what would you say? Could you describe the type of bitachon or security or trust that this person is feeling? I have my own idea based on what you're saying, but I want to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess I'm like thinking of a situation, let's say, like like let's say a situation where you're gonna do something, but like, and like kind of maybe someone brings up a doubt or you have like a little doubt about it. And I think that the fool will kind of like, I think that doubt could either propel you in two ways, and they're kind of like two extreme ways. Either it'll make you like supremely more confident in the situation because you have to like counteract that,
Yeah.
or, and I think that's what the trust is kind of.
Okay. So like he'll force his way through those feelings and muster up a feeling of artificial confidence in his course. Yeah. Okay, good. And it sounds like the result, the consequence is gonna be like just that the seal is gonna miss out on a lot of development and get a lot of bad decisions. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, like he's gonna hit the raw, which the Chacham is gonna turn away from.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, good. All right. Any other thoughts on that before we go on?
I had a thought on like all of the last few ideas, or
Sure.
maybe it's mainly yours and Tamar's idea.
Okay.
But maybe it'll help more of them too.
Yeah.
Is just explain in that context that you guys were reading the pasuk why it says it misaber first and trust second rather than the
Yeah,
way
right.
around.
Right.
Is that it could be that it has to do with the response to fear, meaning both of them end up in a situation and they think about something that could go wrong, and the Chacham accepts this fear and thinks about things and has a response to it, versus the Ksil is angry at the fear. He's angry at the thought that maybe the market would go down, so he like throws it away because he's angry at that feeling and at that idea, at that reality, and therefore rather chooses just to trust in the false reality that conforms to his desires.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so that is slightly different than Tamar, because I think Tamar and my old interpretation, we're talking about anger at the result, like when he doesn't get what he wants. You're saying anger as a response to like just there's part of him that recognizes that reality is not going to automatically go his way, and he gets angry at that, and then the security, the trust stems from is like his bad coping mechanism for that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. That's good. I like that. Okay. Michael.
My idea is very similar to a bunch of the other ones, but I think there are a couple of key distinctions, so I'll try to focus on those.
Sure.
So I have the situation where signs are like starting to show that some situation, whatever it is, are gonna like start going negatively, but like, it's not bad yet, just like signs are there that it's gonna start to turn bad. So what I specifically tried to do was know the difference between yare and then mitaber and then sar and boteach. So I tried to like see what the differences were.
Yeah.
So, and the main thing that I noticed was that boteach, and so sar is like an action word, like he's actually doing something, where boteach is, no, I'm just going to stay here, I'm not going to change anything.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw this pasuk as warning against like this sort of like blank trust, like, like, and like with mitaber, like, I don't know which translation works better for this idea, but I'll go with the angry one, or maybe, I don't know, either one works, where like he's just kind of like, he sees that something's gonna happen, then either he's just like passing, like, no, it'll be fine, I'm just gonna keep trusting whatever it is, or he just like makes himself angry, but like, even then he's not doing anything, like that's just an emotion, like he actually, you can do actions, but he's not doing that, he's just gonna be angry, which isn't gonna help anything.
Yeah. Okay, good. So the scenario is when nothing bad has happened yet, but there are signs that something bad is going to happen. So the Chacham takes action to address, to avoid that outcome, knowing that he has to be the one to make the move. The situation won't right itself. Okay, the Ksil, however, it takes the course of inaction. Okay, he either gets angry, which might feel like he's doing something, but he's not actually interacting with the situation. Or else he'll just trust that everything will be okay, right? So in other words, it's very much like it's a very childish reaction, right? Like the tantrum or the just like denial like of the situation, and just just saying, oh, everything's gonna be okay, right? Is that yeah.
When I think you wrote on the third line, you wrote the situation would write itself. I think it might have been won't write itself, something like that.
The situation, hold on a second. Knowing that he has to be the one to won't, thank you, won't write itself. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, I like that emphasis. That is another nice nuance here. Okay, anyone want to add to that idea? Okay, so let's go with Isaiah, because we haven't heard from Isaiah yet.
So this is also like kind of, I guess it might be the same or just in line with what everyone else is saying, but kind of flips some factors around. Is that sometimes you have a scenario where people have impulses to do things that aren't smart.
Yeah.
Like, jump off something really tall or something like crazy like that.
Yeah.
So a chacham, when he turns away, he decides not to do this thing instead.
Okay.
So, but the fool might, in some scenarios, decide like the not turning away is like being brave, or like trying to go through with it. And like, it's not that they're coping in this situation, it's that they're like, the mistake here is like thinking that like there's some like idea of being courageous or something, and that is like it's a good thing. So I think in some scenarios it's like there could be different motivations, but it's kind of the same mistake.
Okay, so I like the starting point, because the starting point is different than everything we've had so far. Is you're saying that that this is a rod that the chacham is tempted to engage in, right? So the chacham will sense, will feel that temptation, but will recognize that giving into it won't end well for him, right? Won't end well for him, and he'll desist. The ksiel attaches some other value to to acting on that impulse,
pushing through.
Yeah. And pushes through to do it. And sorry, did you explain the boteach?
Yeah, I think that's like it's gonna be okay. Like, you gotta trust that it's like, I'm not explaining it very well, but like yeah.
So for example, you said courage, or rebellion, or I mean, this could be many things, in terms of why he does it. Yeah, let's just think about that for 1 second here, and think about, if anyone wants to add to this, then go ahead and say something. I just want to think about since this is to me, I feel like this is a new idea, or a distinct enough approach, that I want to just make sure I'm not missing anything.
Well, I guess one just question on the ksiel's trust is it trust in himself or the situation? I don't know if it matters. Maybe it could be either, but
I kind of think it's like a fantasy of invulnerability that he has.
Yeah, one of the English translations we had here was overconfident, or is confident. I think that's just I think that is I guess it technically means he's confident in himself, but I think it's better because it's not like he's trusting in something,
Yeah, I like the word invulnerability.
Yeah. I'll add it, as if he's invulnerable. Yeah. So I feel like the invulnerability comes from the fact that he's trusting in this impulse, that he's giving into the impulse. In other words, it's not like in a lot of the other interpretations we've talked about, it's like it's like the pasuk in this week's parsha. Shalom li ki bishrirus libi elech. He blesses himself in his heart, saying, "Peace will be with me because I follow the authority of my heart." You know, like he just because I'm acting in line with this impulse that I have, then that's going to assure that everything is okay. I know I've quoted this before, but that's the okay, what was it called? During World War II, they hold on a second. I have to look this up. Anyone know what the former CIA was called before it was the CIA? What was the CIA called before? Oh yeah, during World War II. During World War II. Oh, the OSS. Okay, so I think this is available online. OSS analysis, analysis of Adolf Hitler. Let's see if this is it. Oh, yeah. So basically, the CIA did attempted to do a psychoanalytic profile of Hitler. Obviously, this is not based on interviews and therapy, but based on like his writings. And there's this chilling line that it opens with. Let me see if I can find the text. Let's see. Is this? I think this is it. Preface. Can I not click on this? Why can I not click on these? Okay, I'll just quote it here. He said something like, "I move through life with the confidence and precision of a sleepwalker." And they said that the cycle. I read this a long time ago, but they said that like that's a very very like specific description to give, and they basically like unpack his statement from based on other statements that he's made, that he basically had this view that like he was destined for greatness, like he had like a very like Hashgacha Pratis type complex. That was reinforced by certain things that happened. Like I think there was a time in World War I when like he was sitting with other, he was a soldier in World War I guess, and he was sitting with other soldiers, and like he suddenly like had this like intuition that he had to get up and like run. So he got up and ran, and then like bomb like hit the spot where he was sitting. And so like there were all these instances like this, and like he had this conviction that Providence had chosen him for to accomplish great things, and that if he just like let himself coast on his intuitions, then like that would take him to victory, so that kind of like, that's what I'm getting, that's a very dramatic case of it. But like when Isaiah was talking about like these impulses, it's like it's not just a trust in your inner impulse, it's a feeling that if you trust in your inner impulse, that act of trusting in yourself is going to make you succeed. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I saw Noah's hand up earlier. Noah, did you have anything you wanted to say or add, or did that go away?
I'm still debating, but I guess because I unmuted, I'm going to say it now.
Okay.
But this is one of my, I know I shouldn't read it this way, but Israeli Hebrew brain is making me do this. And in this case, it's absolutely not the case. But meet the bear means he gets pregnant. So that has colored my entire reading and interpretation of this. But I actually think it's like a good example or mashal, because people want to do the thing that gets people pregnant. And
Yeah.
they might acknowledge that there are consequences, like babies who like need to be taken care of and things of that sort. And someone who's wise might say, I'm not going to do that at this juncture in my life because I cannot take care of a little human. And someone who is not so wise might say, I'm going to do it anyhow. And if I get pregnant, I'm sure things will just work out.
Right. That's a good drasha. I mean, it's a good drasha because it, even though it's definitely not the shot of the pasuk, it is an example of all the ideas we're talking about. So like that's what makes it like a good like drasha that harmonizes with the shot. Nice. Yep. I do not have an Israeli brain and would not have gone in that direction. Okay. Zach.
Okay, so I have another idea, but beforehand, I just a little footnote that kind of caught my attention
Yeah.
is I kind of like that, like three of the translations we have for Misaber, we have, also pretending to pass instead of making himself pass, and pretending to be angry instead of
Yeah.
making himself angry. And I was thinking that's actually really apropos to like all the ideas that we're talking about, is the concept of pretending, because once he has it in his mind that, so to speak, pushing through a thought of fear, or forcing himself to jump off, or getting angry in response to the situation, once he has in mind that that's the mindset, that's the correct course of action for him to take.
Mhm.
Even times when he doesn't really feel that, when he doesn't really feel angry, and maybe he'd have an opportunity not to be angry then, or he doesn't really feel the blind need to be courageous and jump off whatever situation he's facing. In those situations, still he's going to pretend, because that's the model that he thinks he needs to uphold. So he'll pretend to be angry because he thinks that's, anger is his way of responding. So even when he's not angry, he'll pretend.
Interesting.
Even when he, maybe has a chance to listen to his fear, he won't, because he's so used to the model of passing through
Right.
it.
So that's another example of how childish this is, because I think there are two types of tantrums that kids throw. There's the genuine tantrum where they are just angry at reality, and they feel that by like crying and screaming, then that's going to change things. And then there's the other type of tantrum where they have a certain measure of control, but they know that they can get their way if they act angry, and they throw that tantrum. So either way, it's like, it's just, you see in a kid, how far removed their response is from like actually engaging in the world to bring about the results that they want. And it's like evident, but like you don't see that in yourself all the time necessarily. And like the pretending to be angry is just another good example of that. Is like, putting on this mode, and if I just put on this angry mode, then that's going to somehow change things, and that's just not how things work. Yeah.
Right. And I kind of like how the word lends itself to the spectrum
Yeah.
of responses.
That's good.
Okay, so then the idea I had was us thinking about, what if, it was kind of an interesting prompt to pose to myself, but I was thinking, what if the audience of this pasuk was a chacham? What would the idea be? So
we didn't ask the question of who's the audience of the pasuk.
Audience. Yeah, that's true.
We all missed it. Okay, yeah.
So I kind of came up with a nuanced thought.
Okay.
Still chewing on it a little bit, but I was thinking that maybe if the audience is a chacham, then maybe a chacham here means a successful chacham, meaning someone who succeeded in their path of chachma, and a ksil is a chacham who failed in an instance on his path of chachma. And the pursuit, that the thing that a chacham is pursuing is knowledge and truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so this pasuk, I think, discusses the response to false ideas.
Okay.
So when a false ideology or false idea presents itself to chacham, there's a healthy and unhealthy way to respond to it. The successful chacham, his response to something false is, so to speak, fear that maybe he got something wrong, or fear that maybe he'll get influenced by this wrong idea. But either way, he's going to turn away, but he's kind of doing it with the eyes open. He's doing it looking at the wrong idea and turning away from the thing he's turning away from. So he's like, this is what I'm not looking at. This is what I'm like disregarding as false. Whereas the chacham who handles false ideology wrong, his response is he gets mad at this affront of an idea, and instead of, let's say, turning away with his eyes open, his response is to default to trust in himself, meaning he just says, oh, this is wrong. I'm just going to stick with the idea I trust in, meaning I know I have a good idea. I'm just going to stick with that. And he's not like, it's not turning away with his eyes wide open. It's like a brute disengagement and focusing on what he has. And if you follow that path, then he's going to lose nuances of reality, meaning he's going to lose opportunities to improve his ideas or opportunities to understand what he's turning away from. And maybe there'll be that one chance where a bad idea wasn't as bad as he thought it was. Whereas the real Chacham is he's turning away in the same way, but the mechanisms for turning away is not just blindly and like focusing in on himself and what he already has. It's focusing on this false idea and turning away from that.
Okay, so just in terms of the way you're reading the pasuk, then the chiddush is from the word yareh, meaning that someone might just be sar me'ra, and that's definitely a level to be sar me'ra. But if you just sar me'ra, and don't examine it, that's like then you're going to be missing out. But if you're yareh, this type of yira requires a like looking at the thing you're turning away from, feeling what the temptation or the appeal is of the idea, seeing why, and like really like confronting it. Would that be a good way?
I think there's two halves, meaning I'm contrasting fear to misaber, meaning like one is that like analytical approach versus just like blind recoiling.
Right. Yeah.
But then I think there's a second half, which is turning away versus trusting, meaning one is you're trusting what you already have versus you're turning away from that bad idea, and they're slightly different.
Okay, I get the idea. I don't quite know if I get how it's in the pasuk, but let me just write out what I'm hearing so far. Okay, so the Chacham doesn't just reject false ideas in a like blind or brute fashion. He turns away from them with eyes wide open. Okay. Noting, I guess thinking
maybe
about them, analyzing their pros and cons, acknowledging,
maybe being afraid of where he's being mistaken or wrong, or
right, wary that he might be mistaken. Okay, in contrast, the Ksiel just rejects the idea and moves on and takes security in whatever he has embraced as his version of the truth. He consequently he'll lose out even when he's correct in the path he's chosen, right? In other words, like even if he actually is on the side of the truth, he's going to be losing out on a lot of development in his relationship to the truth by the manner in which he rejects falsehood.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if you multiply that across many experiences, then in the cases where he was wrong, he'll also lose out on those opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to write that, but I think that's a good idea. Okay. Tamar, and then let's look at some of Farshim.
Okay, this is not really a whole idea. It's more of like an association, I think.
Sure.
But the misaber thing was making me think of like outrage, like when you feel like something is not good, let's say like in society.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of like mad as if that's like an action.
Yeah.
And maybe you feel like you're being mad is doing something, but I don't know exactly. I don't have like an idea past that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. I feel like that happens a lot more now in a world of social media than it is in a world without news. That's good. Yeah, raging as an action. Yeah. Okay. It feels even
Can
more
I
like
ask a question on? Sorry, when you're
I was
done
just
on
saying, it feels
taps.
even more like an action when you could do like the anger react. because then you're actually like doing something, but you're not. Yeah, Ayala?
Okay, so on Zach's most recent idea,
Yeah.
will the fool, I remember maybe this is like imposing from past pasukim, but that kind of the seal will do that even to ideas which like may be right, but are just different than his. Like he'll kind of go in with the attitude that his ideas are right. So it sounds like from this though, it's saying that this is if he thinks something's wrong, but if like, will he automatically go in thinking that everything that's not his previous idea is wrong?
It's a good question. I mean, when Zach was describing this personality, I definitely think that there is I don't know if I could see this in the pasuk, but he definitely seems to approach life in a binary way. Like either this is, this is right or it's wrong, or it's on my side or it's not on my side, or and I think that'll cause him to make these classifications prematurely when, let's say, like someone who is more of an actual chacham will have curiosity or like deliberation, in just trying to understand. Maybe there are, there's gray areas here. Maybe there's like, pros and cons, but I don't think this seal is going to be able to like have that nuance, because he's going to constantly feel this pressure to either like reject or accept, or like this is, my hashkafa or it's not my hashkafa,
Another point, I guess, or to respond also to that,
Yeah.
to that question, is I think it depends on whether or not the audience is someone on the path of a chacham or someone on the path of exil. Meaning, if they're on the path of exil, then they'll probably reject true ideas as well. Meaning they'll just reject it because it's not theirs. They'll trust in themselves and their own false ideologies. But I think from the context of how I thought of it, it was this poses a risk even to those on the path of chachma, because someone on the path of chachma might be tempted when they hear something wrong to just throw it out. Oh, that's wrong. That's a false thing. It's completely not correct. And they're right. But the manner of which rejecting a false idea, the mechanisms for rejecting a false idea can either elevate a person's chachma or pose as a pitfall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at a couple of Mefarshim. Not surprisingly, a lot of the Mefarshim took these directions, but they expressed it in same the directions we did, but they expressed it in different ways. So let's see. Yeah, so the Metzudas David gives just a good shot here. HaChacham yifchad midavar hamafchid. So the Chacham is afraid of something that ought to be, that ought to instill fear, or that instills fear. V'nishmar mimenu, and he guards from it. Ulezeh hu sar min hara'a, and through this he guards himself from bad. V'lo tavo olav, and it will not befall him. V'haksil mismale era lehiskatif al kol. So this is, I'm not exactly sure what he means. He says the fool fills himself with wrath and rages against everything. Uboteach ba'atzmo shelo yi'una lo ra, and he trusts in himself that nothing bad will happen. V'lo cheinhu, and this is not the case. V'katzar b'davar hamuvan me'atzmo, and it's concise when it's talking about something that is self-evident, meaning that it doesn't need to say that that bad is gonna befall him. So I think again that's like as usual, Metzudas David is giving a shot that is that I think a lot of our ideas fit into. Okay, let's look at the Me'iri though. Me'iri says. So he first takes it in the realm of decision making, then he takes it in the realm of chachma. So he says, Amar shahamaskil mifached tamid b'chol inyanav. So the intelligent person makes himself fearful constantly in all areas. That's paraphrasing another pasuk that we did over the summer, I think. Ashrei adam mifached tamid. We did that on Tisha B'Av, I think, that praiseworthy or happy is the person who fears constantly, but one who makes his heart stubborn will fall into evil. Okay, ad shiyiraso upachado heviuhu lachshov machshavos al pulosav besidram uvitchunasam. To the point, or to the extent that his fear will bring him to think about his actions in order and with all their proper steps. And if he sees potential for harm, Yishmar mehem, he will guard against them, even if he really needs to do the action. So it's interesting he puts it in terms of need. You'll see him do the same thing with the Kseel, but he's saying, like, in other words, let's say you really need to do something, or you really need a certain thing, but then you realize, like, oh, it's a very risky endeavor and it could bring about bad consequences. Then the fact that you really need it is not going to mislead you into thinking it's going to work out okay. But that is a mistake people make, is they think like, well, I really need this to work, and the fact that I need it to work somehow is going to like affect the probability and make it work out. Like the Chacham doesn't fall into that trap. So I think that's just an interesting like particular fallacy there. Uksil misaber klomar she'af b'pula she'ena tzrich lo kol kach. Even in an action that's not so necessary to him. So he says, Laharos gvuras levavo hu mare atzmo ki'ilu kaus al maniasa. In order to demonstrate the might of his heart, he acts as though he is angry about not being able to do the action, or not the action not working out. And he'll do it immediately. Ki adam ha'ose davar mitoch hakas, like a person who acts out of anger, she'ose pu'ulaso b'mihirus, who acts quickly, okay, like impulsively. So I think he's taking the translation here of he pretends to be angry, or he acts, I'd say like he acts in an angry manner, okay, meaning like it's almost like he has something to prove here, like the notion that like that something might not work out for him enrages him, and he has to like I'll show you who's boss, and then he just like does it, even though it's not so important, even though he doesn't really need to do it. Uboteach, and he trusts, Rotalomar, she'ose osam below shum yira, he does it without any fear, ka'adam habatuach, like someone who's confident in it. Okay, so I think this is yet another like idea that's in line with the approaches we took, but with another subtlety here. So can we just see like what is the Meiri bringing out here? That the two elements he's introducing are that the Chacham will fear and turn from the consequence, even if he really needs to do the action. So he adds need, and the fool will like push through and do the action, even if he doesn't really need it. And then the other element he puts here is that the fool acts in the manner of someone who is angry, where he just like does it like rashly, like in a rash manner. What is he bringing out through that emphasis? Laharos gvuros levavo to me is like the key phrase here, like to demonstrate the might of his heart. Like it reminds me of that. I know it's a completely different emotion, maybe, but it reminds me of that Perek in Tehillim that we did. I don't know who was with us, that we did earlier last year about the people who speak Lashon Hara of Asher Amru Lil Shonenu Nagbir Sefasenu Itanu Mi Adon Lanu. Our lips, the people who say, with our tongues we will prevail. Our lips are with us. Who is master over us? Who is Lord over us? It's like I have something to prove, and like if I just do this thing, then like that somehow is like proving my mastery over reality. Yeah, Tamar?
Yeah, I don't have a very like well-defined idea. It's like what you're saying, I think. But yeah, maybe it's not necessarily about, let's say, proving to other people, but more just like he can't accept that something could go wrong for him, so he's just like closing his eyes and going for it because it's too painful in the moment maybe to think about the possibilities.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I that's like, just to describe like what this is like for this person, it's like anything that might not go his way is a threat to his position in reality, and he has to like stamp it down by just like showing who's boss by just doing it. And then with the idea, of course, he trusts that it's going to work out, because that's going to validate his position in reality. Like he can't even tolerate the fact that like it might not go the way he it's like an extreme example of this, if we're going through World War II, big players here, but like that story, I think it's a true story with Stalin, that like when he would make an appearance, in let's say like public speech or something like that, and like people would applaud. So I think there was this, where did I read this? It was a reliable source that like people applauded. And the thing is no one wanted to be the first person to stop applauding. So like they applauded and applauded and applauded and kept on applauding. And it was like for some absurd amount of time. And like finally, like one like old guy like said they'd be going on for like some crazy amount of time. And this old guy like decided to like stop applauding. And like I think he got like dispatched to Siberia or something like that, But like, so I don't know how much of this was like Stalin, implemented by Stalin himself, but like that level of insecurity that like I so can't tolerate the very notion that someone wouldn't support me that I have to like impose my will on everything, you know, like to that degree. Like I can't even like let the victory happen of someone not applauding, stopping applauding me, you know, like that crazy level. I don't know, that's the example that comes to mind. Yeah, Ayala?
I think also because it's like fake, then like, and you know that it's like very fragile, and any little thing that
Yeah.
comes in is gonna knock down the whole system.
Right. Yeah, that's like I think actually another example of that reminds me of the classic example of like Haman getting enraged when Mordecai didn't bow down to him. Like you know, like his ego is really that fragile, you know, that like one little chink in the armor, you know, he knows that's enough to like you know, disturb his pristine view of like his own greatness. Yeah. Okay, again, I'm not exactly. I think we get a sense of the nuance he's adding to this. I'm sure there's more to it, but let's go on to his next shot here. So then he says, "Uv'inyan hachachma, chacham rotzalomar maskil hamislamed umuchan lihios chacham." Okay, so that's kind of like what Zach was saying, in the sense that it is an intelligent person who's training himself, who's learning, he is self-educating, and he is like disposed to be a chacham. Okay, so in other words, he's not the successful chacham yet, but the pasuk is talking to someone who's like on track to be a chacham. So he is yare beharisa uvemihirus. He is afraid of literally breaking through and of quickness in his learning. Umachavin lekachas limudo al seder yashar me'ad ma'ad, and he focuses on taking his learning in the correct order, step by step, little by little. Ki yare lenafsho pen yikashal beinyano, because he's afraid of himself lest he make a mistake. He doesn't want to skip any steps. He doesn't want to like going out of order. You know, he doesn't want to rush anything. But uksiel misaber, but uksiel is misaber, klomar mischazik ba'avur hageder. He strengthens himself, I would say, in reaction to the fence. Umedalig, and he jumps. Umakapets, and he skips. Umavalbil limud, and he messes up his learning. V'lo yachush lemishal, and he doesn't worry about stumbling blocks. Ubotech ba'asmo, and he trusts in himself. He trusts in himself v'nichshal, and he stumbles. So in other words, this is talking about development in learning, and he's saying the person who really wants to be a chacham will be very afraid of skipping steps and making mistakes because he knows the potential for error could jeopardize his whole development. Whereas the ksiel, which is funny, in this case, it's ksiel presumably who also wants to succeed in chachma, you know, but he's gonna like be rushing to like, you know, to like, whether out of ego or out of just lack of self-control or something like that, he's not worried about these stumbling blocks, and that causes him to fall. So can we, let's see. I mean, that's a good application, but let's just think about, see if we can get an idea here. I mean, a lot of the ideas that we were talking about really had to do with the consequences that could come from the external world. And I think that this is really showing about the consequences that can come in the internal world of your mental development, you know, your learning development. And it's a very delicate ecosystem in there, you know, like, you know, there are people, let's say, who, I mean, the most common example of this that I see, that I've seen throughout my you know, my learning time is like people who want to rush into certain areas of philosophy before they've mastered clear thinking, or before they've gotten the Ikarim down clearly, or before they know how to like do their own research, you know, and they'll rush into these areas, you know, because these are exciting areas, or because they want to like, you know, be engaged in like the exciting debates or whatever, but they'll expose their minds to ideas that they're not ready for, and then they'll fancy themselves as though they actually know them, and then that'll like stunt their development, you know. Or they will get drawn into that and they won't invest the time in their actual development, and that will have long-term effects. So it's like a fear of what's going to happen to me and my development if I don't proceed with caution, you know, internally.
I wonder if it could be summed up of how one responds to out of reach opportunities. So when you see an opportunity, but it's out of your reach, what's your response? Is it, okay, let me build until it's an appropriate opportunity within my reach?
Right.
Or is response to ignore the out of reach element and just focus on the opportunity.
Right. That's a good example. And if you want to combine that with his last interpretation here, I think a lot of times, maybe just because you're using the word opportunity, person might say, well, I really need this, and therefore I should do it. Well, the fact that you really need it does not mean that you're going to be immune to the consequences that come from going into this prematurely, so like, yeah, it's an opportunity, but like, it's just not, you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it right now. Yeah. Let's do this one last one here in the Meiri, and then we'll call it a night. There's also an insight in application to Torah. Shamaskil, the intelligent person, im hi galus lo tam ha-mitzvah v'sibas hadavar, if the reason for a mitzvah or the cause of a mitzvah is revealed to him, lo yakel rosho lomar, he will not be treated lightly, saying ani arbe v'lo asur, okay, which is the irony, because that's that's the mitzvah for the king that Shlomo Melech violated. I'll increase, wives, I'll increase, horses. The mitzvahs for the king, where the Torah says, lest his heart will veer from God. And Shlomo Melech said, well, I know the reason, I can do this, and I cannot be affected by it. And lo and behold, that's what happened. He got affected. So the fool trusts in himself and misaber, and trusts in himself and stumbles. I don't know how he's translating misaber here. Hamashal Bazat, the example. So he gives an interesting example. Im hamelech tziva shelo yelech shum adam beneshef ela im kein nero biyado. Let's say the king makes a law that no one should go out at night without a lamp. And it's obvious to everybody that the reason for this is to distance yourself from harm, right? Like if you're walking around in the middle of the night in pitch black, you're going to trip. So everyone knows it. The Chacham and the Chassid should not say, I have enough knowledge to guard myself from this harm, and I don't need this. Turns out that he will, consequently, he will transgress the king's mitzvah, which is a universal mitzvah, meaning indiscriminate mitzvah, because it's possible that due to various causes, he will stumble in his thoughts. Okay, so, I don't know, but if you had this, but when he started talking, he said, like, if the reason for a mitzvah is revealed, he shouldn't be like, frivolous and say, well, I'm not going to like succumb. I thought he was talking about chukim. I thought he was talking about mitzvahs where the reasons are not obvious. And like, just because you think you have knowledge of the reason, don't like justify and rationalize violating the mitzvah. But then he gives this example of reason of mitzvah where everything is known. The reason is evident, like which is like the mishpatim, like ma'akeh. Like let's say the example would be, God says build a fence around your roof so that no one falls. So a person says, well, I know the dangers of falling, so I'm not gonna like worry about building a ma'akeh here. Lo and behold, he's gonna fall. So I think that's like an interesting kind of rationalization here, that like you think that because you know the reason, and therefore you somehow think that protects you against the odds, but you're subject to human error. And so like the fact that you know the reason does not protect you from human error or like practical error. Oh man, I had a bad case of this over the summer. I'll give this example. This is not in mitzvos, but so I stayed in the very beginning of the summer. I stayed in a Airbnb, which was a tiny home. Okay, and these tiny homes have like a lower floor, and then they have like a loft with like wooden stairs, and then like the loft has a bed on it. Okay, so the first tiny home I stayed in, then I got up in the middle of the night to like go to the bathroom or something like that, and I did not realize that the steps had different widths. So like it's not like a normal thing where like the steps are all the same. So like I almost fell. Okay, and it was also in the middle of the night, and I didn't have my glasses on, and it was dark. So like so then the next time I was in a tiny home at the end of the summer, it was the same exact setup. Okay, and I said, okay, this time I know where the spot is. I know that this is the narrow step. So I'm good. I'm not going to fall again, So what happened? Lo and behold, I wake up in the middle of the night. and I'm walking down the steps. And in this tiny home, the ladder to the second loft, you would think that a ladder would culminate landing on the ground, on the floor, but no, the ladder went down to the first step. So I stepped on what I thought was the ground, but it was really the first step. And then I took one more step. I fell and I scraped my knee and I jammed my finger. And I think I don't know if I broke my finger. My finger still hurts. Like this was like over like a month ago. My finger still hurts. And I have thought about this, about how like, you know, I saw the need for caution. Like, the one thing if I just like threw caution to the wind, but no, I see, look, okay, there is a need for caution here, and I know how to be careful. That's it. I'm free from like any any harm. But nope, like there is another harm that I didn't see. Same thing for mitzvos is like, you know, let's say like Shlomo HaMelech, you know, don't marry too many wives, you know. So I'm sure he must have thought to himself, oh, because when a king has a lot of wives, then like he's going to become all full of himself, and like that's going to lead to bad decisions. And I'm the author of Mishlei, like I don't need to like worry about that. And what happened? He married too many wives, and it led to an avodah zara problem in the nation, which is not necessarily like the first harm that would come to a normal king, you know, and like that led to these problems, you know. So like just because you know a reason to a mitzvah does not mean that you're guarding against all the harms that Hashem is trying to protect you from. And it doesn't even mean that you're going to successfully guard against that obvious harm. You could fall and bust your finger also, you know. Okay, so let's review what we have. I think there's a lot more mafarshim here that are good. But yeah, you have someone have another
I just said for your finger.
Sorry, say that again.
I was just saying refuah shalema for your finger.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's actually a good reminder. The dull pain that I experience every time I'm typing is a good reminder of my blunder. Maybe that was worth it. I don't know. Okay. So we had, and again, it's gonna be a little hard to I'm gonna try my best to differentiate between the different ideas. Okay. So we had Zach's idea, his first idea, which is that this has to do with coping mechanisms for how you cope with the fact that things might not work out. So the Chacham goes into the scenario with that awareness and taking responsibility for things that go wrong. And there's always this positive, that's not the right word, positive feedback loop. I mean like positive feedback loop in the sense that he's constantly getting feedback, which is positive for him, you know, and like growing from that and like learning from that and not just blaming and deflecting outward. Whereas the Ksiel is going to constantly just be angry, which is not really going to change anything when things don't go his way. And where was the security here or the confidence? I don't remember. Oh, that he's going to be confident that things will work out and then angry when things don't work out. Tamar and my first idea was the basic idea that the Chacham recognizes that things might not go his way and takes precautions. The Ksiel assumes that reality will go his way, and when it doesn't, he gets angry. So he's constantly flipping back and forth between anger and overconfidence, anger and overconfidence. The consequence is he'll make more bad decisions, suffer more consequences, and he'll get way angrier because he has this feeling of entitlement that reality should go his way. Ayala's idea had to do not so much with how the Chacham and the Ksiel respond to the external world, but how they respond to their inner feelings, that the Chacham is monitoring himself and takes those feelings and uses them as reflection points, which will make extra sure that he's making the best decisions or learning from the situation, whereas the Ksiel will force those out of the way and just kind of like muster up this artificial confidence and push forward. Michael was saying that this has to do with when there's a sign of something bad coming to be on the horizon, then the Chacham will actually act, will fear, and then he'll sur meira means an actual decision and change of course, whereas the Ksiel will just trust, which is passive, or get angry, which is not a real action. It's just, it feels like an action, but it's not an actual action. And that's just not going to help him in either way. Isaiah was saying that that this has to do with Ra that he's tempted to do, and he'll realize that just because I have this feeling doesn't mean I should do it. Whereas the Ksiel does the opposite. He takes that feeling and feels that if I act on it, then that will somehow create this invulnerability, like the Hitler in the extreme example, or the guy in this week's parsha of blessing himself in his heart, saying, as long as I follow my heart, then like, you know, things are going to work out well for me. Zach's second idea had to do with the way that a chacham rejects things that he deems to be false will be with complete analysis and awareness and recognition that he might be missing stuff. So he'll basically make sure to learn as much as he can, even when he's making decisions about what's right and wrong and true and false, and have this awareness that he could be wrong and that this is just a provisional condition. Whereas the ksiel would just like say, oh, that's wrong. That's not my derech. That's not my hashkafa. He'll just turn away and reject it. And even when he's right, he's missing out on a lot of opportunity for growth. And when he's wrong, he's going to be really wrong because he's not like scrutinizing things and looking at the details. Then the Meiri had this idea of acting in haste to demonstrate the power of his heart. That we said is like this, also this very childish thing where like you sense that things, that reality doesn't yield to your desires, and you can't even stand that feeling. So you just have to you have to show reality who's boss by just doing it anyway. And that's not going to work out for the reasons we said above. In Chachma, we said that the Chacham will not skip steps, and he'll realize how easy it is to screw up his development, whereas the Ksiel will push forward and skip steps and do things he's not ready for, and out of some emotion or temptation, and that's going to mess himself up. And then when it comes to mitzvos or tiny houses, tiny homes, and precautions, then like, the mistake is to think that because I know a reason, therefore I am guarded automatically against all bad things that can happen. And the answer is no. You might not have, there might be other reasons you're not aware of, or even in that reason, you might not successfully guard yourself. Just because you know what could happen doesn't mean that you're going to prevent it from happening. Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of other ideas in this pasuk also. Thank you for doing this pasuk again. I am still convinced that this is one of the best starter pasukim. It has so many basic ideas about Mishlei, and I'm excited to introduce 40 new students to Mishlei tomorrow. I'm super, super excited. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I believe the schedule will be for next week, Bli Neder. We will return to the parak we were on, which is 12. I think we're up to 12, 25. And then I think the week after that, we're probably not going to have shiur because it's Som Gedalia, and I might try to squeeze in a trip to Connecticut and drive up that night. So I don't think we're going to have shiur that night. And then the week after that, is that Yom HaKippurim? Whatever.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, thanks. So yeah, so I guess next week the plan is to be on, but then it looks like we have a series of like Som Gedalia, Yom Kippurim, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, so we might not really reconvene on a regular basis until October. Okay, but Bli Neder next week we're on. Okay, thanks for coming. This was fun. Good to be back temporarily, at least. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, have a good night.
Thank you.